We're live.
This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story, once a week. I'm Gerald.
And I'm Anise. And that's it. It's just the two of us.
It's the two of us. And then there were two.
Yeah. Well, Romney's not here for a good reason. He just got married over the weekend and he's honeymooning.
Yeah.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
And Maya's computer problems are... It's because she's always like trying to repair things instead of buying a new one, which I understand. Like probably if I just repaired mine, it would be working great. Like it's just old, so it's just slow, but the hard drive's all fine. I can clean it up. But I'm just like, I want a new one in the next few months.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right. So, right. Here we are with the script. Today we are discussing The Diamond as Big as the Ritz by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you haven't read it yet, pause the podcast, read the story, then come back. And apologies for the length of this story. One of the downsides of choosing stories sight unseen is that occasionally you turn up a whopper like this at over 15,000 words. But you'll enjoy it. We follow the adventures of John T. Unger, who is sent from his sleepy hometown of Hades on the Mississippi to a very upmarket residential school near Boston. He meets Percy Washington, who invites him back to his parents' house for the summer recess. They live in the Montana Rockies. There, Unger discovers a land of incredible, unimaginable wealth based on a mountain-sized diamond. But all is not as it seems in this heaven, as Unger finds that great wealth does not necessarily bring great happiness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very nice. We still did the cliffhanger summaries, which is great. It's like a great byline. Like, that would be like a great sleeve of a book to get people like hooked.
Yeah. What? Let's read it.
Yeah. Oh, let's read this, which is great. You should go read this. It's fun, but it flows. Like I read it, in one sitting without feeling like it was overly long, except I'll do my overall first. Overall, I liked it, but there were some moments where I was like, this is chapter 11 of The Picture of Dorian Gray all over again, which is like the jewels, the silk. I was like, oh my God, every color imaginable. And then all of like the illusions to like nymphs and gods. And I'm like, stop. We get it. it. Back to the plot. That was my only thing. Yeah,
I think so. I quite like that. I quite like that. In actual fact, that never got old for me. I quite enjoyed his description because it was different all the time. He how many different ways can you think of describing this huge, unimaginable wealth? And so I quite like that. But overall,
the parts where that popped out for me was the car with the silk tapestry, upholstery, and ostrich feathers. So like the car was fun, and the bedroom that has the black walls, but then they slide when it's daytime, so it's no longer black walls, and the bed tips over so you can roll to your bath, so you don't have to get up to take a bath. That was hilarious.
There's so much in this story that I just laughed at. I thought it was really, really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also just like another moment where I like stopped and laughed out loud was when he's saying how the father, Braddock smelled of horses, the best horses. And that was it. The rest of the story has like these long passages about like a chair. And he's not giving me like the horses that he could imagine, pulling a chariot, like a pot, like none of that. None of that. The best horses. I laughed.
I just think because some time ago I read The Great Gatsby as part of a book club. And there are so many similarities holding up these incredibly wealthy people as being figures of fun and stupidity and recklessness and it just he holds these people up and you can't help there's no way you can admire them or aspire to be them. You think these people are stupid.
Yeah, the hedonism, the selfishness, the immorality of it, right? How they just like invite friends they know are going to be killed by the end of the summer, just casually, like, oh yeah, I've got to kill them. What was the line that she said about that? Actually, it was a hell of a line.
I've got it somewhere.
I gotta find it. Where she kiss mean, which also that name. Just for that one joke about, did you say kiss mean or kiss me? Just for that, like.
Yeah.
And what we'll get to the casual racism, which like was so absurd. It actually broke from distasteful to funny by the end. Like it actually was so over the top that it became part of the humor by the end of it.
Yeah,
which is
it's incredibly difficult to do that because I'm probably oversensitive in some respects, but it's, you know, at the end when the planes are attacking and Kismine says they go $50,000 worth of slaves at pre-war prices. So few Americans have any respect for property.
Yeah, exactly. Like it gets silly, like to the point where it's like no one actually speaks this way. And the thing that's also funny is that it's the 1920s and they've convinced 250. I mean, okay, for people who haven't read the story. So when they found this mountain, it was the grandfather of the current youngest generation who, after this, saw the Civil War, saw the South was losing. He had a plantation in Virginia. So he and his 12 slaves set off west and then found this mountain with diamonds in it. And it's like kind of cut off. There's like a gully. It's like hard to get to and it's a little bit hidden. So these slaves, he writes a fake proclamation saying that the South wins and they are not free, and these people are cut off from the rest of society. And now, 2 generations later, there's 250 slaves who still think that slavery, like the whole premise is insane. But it's funny. That's why it's funny. Like it's so over the top that you can't. At no point does it feel like this is a normative commentary that Fitzgerald's making on society. Like at no point do you feel like he's saying slaves are good. It sounds like these people are crazy. Like that's why it gets, you know, yeah, I don't know if you agree, but it gets so fantastical, so over the top, so ridiculous that it's just like, well, this is just silly now.
Yeah. I think that line about the slaves going up in, you know, no one has any respect for property anymore. That sort of summed it up for me because that's, you know, and I think I found the line that you're talking about. Oh yes. Father took no chances, and Jasmine kept writing them to come, and they had such a good time.
No, it's around there, but it was a different line. Let me find it. I'm gonna search that to find it. It's so long. By finding anything, it takes forever. Okay, they had such a good time. Your father hadn't burned before they left. She nodded. Okay, it was towards the end. Okay, when John's like, but I fail to understand why you kept on inviting them. Think of how lonesome it'd be out here if we never had anyone. Why, father and mother have sacrificed some of their best friends just as we have. There was another line that was even better. That was like, it's before the talking about kissing a corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as we have.
It's in August, usually it's only natural for us to get all the pleasure out of them that we can first.
Yes, and this is it. When Kismine says, I shall probably have visitors too. I'll harden up to it, it meaning murder. I'll harden up to it. We can't let such an inevitable thing as death stand in the way of enjoying life while we have it. Is that death inevitable, or did you guys kill them? That line was the one that I was like, okay.
Yeah, I suppose in a way, death is inevitable. You know, we all die at some point. But yeah, it's
right.
You know,
these people had decades ahead of them. These are girls.
Yeah. No, it was funny. There's so many points. I said in Slack, you know, there's so many things that you know, it's absurd coming to Kismine. Think of the millions and millions of people in the world, labourers and all, who get along with only 2 maids. You just,
And also, when they're, so again, for people who haven't read this, so what they've been doing to keep this place secret, the generations have found ways to keep surveyors confused. They've done fake magnetic fields to confuse compasses. They changed maps somehow. They broke into where the maps are being kept and trying to keep the secret. But now it's the 1920s, and their biggest challenge is planes. So planes are going to fly overhead and find this. So they have anti-aircraft guns to shoot down planes, and then they keep the pilots that survive as prisoners. And they have these prisoners in a glass bowl in the ground with like a grate on top out on the golf green. They also have their own golf course, obviously. So there's this whole conversation where Braddock is talking to all of these prisoners, and they're just, you know, one of them, he's like, to the captor, you pretend to be a fair-minded man, because the captor's always thinking like, if there was a way I could give them amnesia, like he's like, how can I? Because he thinks it's a dumb expense to have all these prisoners, but there's just no way out of this. And that's when Braddock, this is what I'm saying, where like it's absurd, their position, and then thrown in with casual racism, it's just funny. So Braddock goes, how absurd. How could a man of my position be fair-minded towards you, pilots who flew overhead? You might as well speak of a Spaniard being fair-minded toward a piece of steak. Just like completely unnecessary.
Yeah. I highlighted that bit. There's, as you say, it is so ridiculous. And another great line, they're talking about Jasmine. And Jasmine had never recovered from the shock and disappointment caused her by the termination of the World War, just as she was about to start for Europe as a canteen expert. So it's just, how dare they stop the war just when okay.
And then Braddock tried to start another world war in the Balkans, but it failed.
I know.
Just so his daughter could go,
But you in amongst, and strangely, written in the 20s, but sort of strangely relevant now too, because if you have great, you don't have a mountain-sized diamond, but if you have great wealth, there's no end to the things you can do. You can start world wars. You can control politicians. You can do whatever you want. So it's an amazing prescient comment on wealth and society, I think.
Yeah, though I don't think it's necessarily prescient, because when you see all the commentary on socioeconomic status today, they're saying we're going back to the Gilded Age, to the time of the Great Barons. In the 1920s, you're sort of just coming out of that. It isn't really until World War II where you're fully out of that. So in a way, we're reverting to that. That did exist then, right?
Yeah.
Which is depressing as well.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's in a way, there's not much to say about this story.
Well, there is,
because
yes. So I was going to take us to that. Most of the 15,000 plus words is just you giggling at how absurd this is. That is going to be most of your experience. But at the very end, he's actually getting to the point he's trying to make, which is now there's dozens of planes overhead. They're bombing out the anti-aircraft guns. They're bombing out the villa. And there's a moment where Braddock, the patriarch of this rich family, climbs to the top of his diamond mountain holding a giant, well, he's not holding it, two of his slaves are holding a giant diamond, and he's bargaining with God. He thinks that his wealth has made him to the point where he can bargain with God, saying, I'm going to give you this amazing diamond. I'm going to cut it with 1,000 different facets, more leaves than there are on a tree. I'm going to put it in a golden cathedral bigger than anything that's ever been built, all for you, if you make everything as it was yesterday before these planes showed up here. And I think that's when Fitzgerald's moving away from the absurd, these people are crazy, to like making you think, do people with great wealth really see themselves in this way? I don't know what you made of that.
To me, that was just a sort of, in a way, it was just a logical extension of what they were doing. They controlled everything. They controlled the people. They controlled who came and who left. Their little plot of land, a huge plot of land. So in a way, I sort of, it wasn't a surprise to me that he tried that. And I quite like the way Fitzgerald sort of wrote that the sky went a bit grey and it was God's turning him down. You just think, good. Very good.
I like the part where God's turning him down. And the way that this guy argues for it, though, because it made me think of the mega churches that exist today in America. I don't know if you guys have them, but it's called prosperity gospel, that people who have a lot of material wealth have been rewarded by God, and that if you want to have great material wealth, you have to give big donations to the church. And some of those mega church pastors have their own private jets and mega mansions. Do you know about this? Because it's insane. If we have listeners who are part of it, sorry I said it's insane, but I mean, they're flying around in giant private jets. So think about it. Anyway, so prosperity gospel, it made me think a little bit of that, because you can see a little bit how the prosperity gospel got to where it is when he starts citing as to his evidence that this is going to work and that God should barter with him on this, the cathedrals of the past. pyramids, anything that was built to the gods in general, whether it's to the Judeo-Christian gods specifically or to just gods, as evidence that this is something that gods also covet, that material wealth is something that not only people aspire to, but the gods as well, and that this thing matters, and that diamonds and gold have value to God. That was his argument that was ultimately rejected. But you can see how, following the history of mankind and how, you could argue like they didn't actually build the cathedrals to appease God. It was to impress the power of the church upon other people, to create converts. That's the real reason that the churches were so big. It was so that people could be like, wow, this is a super successful institution. Their religion must be correct. And then you convert. But still, like his argument that way just made, it does make you think about that, how material wealth is so important to the history of mankind. The people who have material wealth tend to succeed, that you can almost see like why he thinks this bet with God's going to pay off. Yeah,
you can see that if he really, I don't know whether he really believes it, but if he believed that God showed him this place and brought him to this place, so God must have a reason for giving him this huge wealth. So, why shouldn't he give some of it back to God? And you can. There's this whole thing about sort of charities as well. Just slightly off topic, but I'll come back. Because charities employ chief executives and people in authority at very high salaries, and you think, well, that's not right. It's supposed to be a charity, but they are creating the money to go into the charity, so it's worth it. So, in a way, it's the same with churches and with these new churches that, they've got private jets, but private jets allow them to spread the ministry further and wider, and it all helps their cause.
But I like that Fitzgerald has God rejected. And then what does Braddock do? Braddock then goes into the Diamond Mountain with his wife, his son, and 2 of his slaves, and blows the whole thing up. If I can't have it, no one can. I'd rather be dead than poor. That's the final statement.
Yeah. It's and in a way, it's a sort of funny ending. It's not the real ending, but it's a funny ending to that part of the story. I don't know. It just felt a little bit wrong to me. I don't know. Just I can see that if I can't have it, then and he's obviously facing, because people do, don't they? They're facing the destruction of their lives as they know it. So there's nothing enough. They can't face the reality of a normal life, so they might as well end it all. So I can sort of see that, but it just sort of felt a bit strange in the story.
Yeah, especially when you look at the other facts, which is he already has billions in bank accounts that aren't being touched by this attack. So he just doesn't want anyone else to have the diamonds. But then he can blow up the diamonds if that's the case without killing himself. But it's a little bit like having lost this thing. It's like he has basically lost himself. Like his whole sense of identity, pride, ego is wrapped up in the giant Diamond Mountain and being the only one who has access to it. But the daughters survive with the protagonist, and then it goes back to humor. It goes back like, ha ha ha, we just did this whole commentary, and now ha ha ha, back to funniness. Oh, because the protagonist told Kismine to pull jewels out of her drawers, because she just has jewels. She's a 16-year-old girl with jewels in her drawers, so they can escape and not be completely penniless. And then she's pulling out her jewels, and she had taken the rhinestones instead of diamonds. The only reason she even had rhinestones was one of their friends who they killed at the end of the summer had her rhinestones on her dress. And she thought, oh, that's nice, because she had never seen rhinestones before, and it was different from diamonds, and she was bored of diamonds. So she accidentally took rhinestones. It's just...
and they go, oh, never mind. That's quite... I love, And Jasmine again, I love washing, she said quietly. I've always washed my own handkerchiefs. I'll take in laundry and support you both.
Yeah. And also how they think they're penniless now. John's family isn't penniless. He's going to a fancy boarding school where he meets rich kids all the time in New England. They're not penniless. They're like legit middle class, even upper middle class. And they're like, oh, we're going to be penniless now. It'll be so much fun. We're an adventure. We're going to be free and poor and fun. And that's when John's like, yeah, history. What's his line? Like basically history has proven that those two things cannot happen. Like they're mutually exclusive. Said it differently though. I was like, yeah, that's not what being poor is.
No,
but they're not going to be poor either.
No, and yeah, I don't see. I wondered. I was trying to find some reference after I'd read it the first time, because Hades is obviously another word for hell. So I wondered whether he was portraying this place as heaven, but they didn't realize it, and in actual fact they're going to hell, but hell's not such a bad place. It's I don't know. I was trying to. Perhaps I'm reading. He must have used Hades for a reason.
He must have, but I think he is sort of making the other place seem like heaven. It's very heavenly. It's over the top. It has all of these celestial allegories and comparisons. But ultimately, God forsakes this so-called heaven. So it's a heaven imposter created by man, right? It's by a guy who considered himself God, thought he was on equal footing with God, could negotiate with God, and then couldn't. I think that's why at the end, Kismene says, "Father will be there," and Hades, and John turned to her in astonishment. "Your father is dead," he replied somberly. "Why should he go to Hades? You have it confused with another place that was abolished long ago." So it's this idea. So there is this sort of comparison between heaven and hell, as it is wrapped up in money. The provincial town where only a few people can actually go to, like the boarding school in New England, down in Mississippi where it's hot, and then you have up in Montana, nice and cool, very beautiful, lots of celestial allegories. But I think by the end he's saying, look, these constructs are bull. Like your God is dead. Your father is dead. That's not true. And this also isn't hell. So I think he does set up that dichotomy to by the end be like, this dichotomy is stupid.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. It's funny.
And also when Kismene says, what a dream it was, how strange it seems to be here with one dress and a penniless fiancé. Again, not penniless. Under the stars. I never noticed the stars before. I always thought of them as great big diamonds that belonged to someone. Now they frighten me. They make me feel that it was all a dream, all my youth. I like that.
Yeah, it is. I quite like it. It adds to the absurdity that this guy goes into a mountain, blows himself and his wife and his servants up, and then he goes back to humor and. It's a very, very clever writer and very, very confident writer that can do that and says, yeah, I can do. I'll take the reader with me.
So it does remind me of we shared on the Literary Roadhouse, the Twitter feed, the Plowshares article about writer obsessions, and one of them was F. Scott Fitzgerald's obsession with writing about very wealthy people who are immoral, and then the poor guy who falls for the wealthy woman who becomes undone by the wealthy woman. This had that in there too, and they're like that he wrote this over and over and over and over until he got it beautifully in The Great Gatsby. But it's here too. That whole argument that they have, where she basically is like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna die. Sorry, I shouldn't have told you. Now you're gonna be super sad until your death, which is like in a few days. But I'd rather you be dead than ever kiss another woman." He's like, "Oh, would you?" like that whole thing is something that he explores a lot in his writing, and it made me think of that. Article was very timely that I had just read it before reading this, because it's here too. This is all he writes about.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? It's I'm not a fan of the super rich, to be honest. But I enjoy the fact that he sends them up and he ridicules them but in quite a subtle way. It's not. It's sort of subtle, but it's not. He's not saying, look at these people, they're stupid, but he's showing you how stupid they act and their beliefs and what they do. It's just larger than life. Yeah.
And the main character always starts by admiring that, right? And then by the end of it, that admiration bites him in the butt. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, here he barely escaped with his life.
Yeah, he's quite enthralled by it, isn't he? He's quite enjoying the rolling out of bed into a bath.
Yeah, which honestly, when I read that, I'm like, I would not enjoy that. No. I would much rather get up and go into the really nice bath with an aquarium underneath.
The
crystal tub. with real fish underneath.
You would just think, what's happening? Why am I being turfed out a bit? But yeah. It's pretty absurd.
And also just like the car that's huge, so it can go over the rocks in the gully, and then they have to put cables with hooks into the hubcaps to pop it up. Like it's just like the whole thing. It's so over the top. It actually made me think a little bit of G.K. Chesterton. I don't know if you've ever read him.
No.
But The Man Who Was Thursday, I believe, or was Friday. I forget what day of the week. But I think it was The Man Who Was Thursday. It's completely different. Chesterton is a very Christian writer, a lot of Christian allegory in it, but had this same sort of like everything is insane. Like that J.K. Chesterton book, I think was also from around this period, maybe a little later. But it had like in a bar, you sit down at a table for two people, and it corkscrews underground into a secret like lair shaped like a bomb, and the walls are made from interlocking guns. And I'm like, this like predates Batman and stuff like that. It's wild. It's really wild. Like it's nuts. And then all the different days, like there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're all different people. They're just over the top caricatures. It's a really colorful book, like super colorful book. And it made me think of that. Just like I was like this like cable hubcap thing. Like that's a very G.K. Chesterton thing to me.
I can see that. Wow, that sounds great. I've made a note. I should read that at some point.
Yeah. It's a little dense in places, but there's a crazy chase scene that's amazing early on in that book. Like this predates all of that.
Fantastic.
Which makes me think. I keep saying all of that. I'm thinking of movies and TV shows and comics. There was a comment here that was very mean about movie producers and directors. Why? Why? Let me see. It was like the moving. I'm gonna find it. The moving picture. Okay. So John's asking, who did plan all your wonderful reception rooms and halls and approaches and bathrooms? Well, answered Percy, the friend from the boarding school. I blush to tell you, but it was a moving picture fella. He was the only man we found who was used to playing with a limited amount of money, though he did tuck his napkin in his collar and couldn't read or write. So it's like, why they just found this very strange. Why? Yeah. It's like one admiration, like he's the only guy with any creativity, but he had no class and was illiterate.
That's a kind of because he was because I was reading about him. And he was invited with his wife to Hollywood to write a screenplay or something, but he was a terrible drunkard, and they left after 2 months or something. So maybe he's getting back at that.
I don't know if anyone knows. If there's an F. Scott Fitzgerald like super fan expert out there, please let us know what's up with this, where he's like acknowledging how creative they are, but it's just like they suck and are illiterate. There's something there. He wouldn't write that for no reason. It just felt very specific and unnecessary. Yeah. Poor movie producers. Yeah. Right. Wow. It's only two of us, so it's gonna be a shorter episode. I think so, but we're close on 30 minutes, so that's not too bad. Yeah. We spent most of that time reading out extracts. It was so good. When you have 15,000 words, I mean, it was just really absurd. It was really insane. Oh, again, the racism got to the point where, like, it's funny. The whole thing with baths, where he's like, at one point, I thought the slaves should live in luxury, so I gave them all houses with their own tiled bathrooms, and I ordered them to take a bath every day, but then I stopped because they got a cold and died. Some races just aren't made for water except for drinking. What is this? What is this whole monologue? It's insane. That is insane. It's just mental. Yeah, and a couple of points that you mentioned, Darkies, which is such a. I haven't heard that word for decades, and just think I don't know. It's so not used at all these days, but. I wonder, I'd like an opinion, though, from a Black American, and just be like, is this to the point of absurdity where you, too, can just sort of laugh at these characters? Or is there something that we're missing where it's like, wait a minute, these criticisms are, the commentary he's making is still kind of very real for people who had a lot of money, who felt very entitled to property, who saw Black people as property. Like, that part's all very real, but it just comes out in such a crazy way. Like, it's so exaggerated to us. But I wonder if somebody, coming from a different perspective would say, I don't know if it's as big an exaggeration as you guys think it is. Like, to me, it was cartoonishly out of proportion. So you can take it in that way. Like, everything was cartoonishly out of proportion, including rolling out of bed literally into a bath, right? Everything was insane. But I wonder if there's something else there that we're not quite getting. So again, readers, please send in your thoughts.
It could be right, because we can see, cartoonish is, we know that there's a sort of element of truth. There's a large proportion of truth in it. But it's like cartoonists, they exaggerate things so that it becomes funny. And you're right, we may be upsetting and annoying a lot of people here by saying it's funny, but
again, you can do both, right? Like, that's what's good about a lot of really great comedy is you're pinpointing something so we can all laugh at it. If you're laughing up, right? If you're laughing at the people with money, we're not laughing at the people who are the slaves of the story. We're laughing at upwards. And then so the same way that we're saying we're laughing at these cartoonish representations of hyper wealthy people, we also know that there's some commentary there about how they see themselves that's real, that they do think they're all powerful, that they do think they're outstanding with God to some extent.
Yeah.
So again, with this, we can still laugh at how cartoonishly racist these people are, the wealthy family, while still acknowledging there are a lot of people that do have attitudes that are frighteningly similar to that, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can do both. You can laugh at it while still saying, yeah, that's rooted in some truth.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as you say, I think your point about laughing upwards at the people who have these attitudes and say these things is the only way in which that becomes acceptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Who you're laughing at really matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, shall we do ratings? I think I talked myself up.
Oh, really? Oh, dear. I was Kenichi Prophecy again. It's a 6 for me. I enjoyed it so much. It's such a good read. So yeah, 6.
I don't know what it is for me. Like Kenichi Prophecy myself too. It's gonna stay with me. It's gonna be very memorable. Partially because it's so long. It takes that much chunk out of your day.
That's harsh.
I know, but I didn't hate it. It wasn't a waste of time at all.
Yeah.
So it was time well spent. 5.5. I feel like I deserved the 6s for like.
Very special. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not having a quiz today because you'd win. So
I would win. But you said that your quiz had some fun facts. Can you just say the fun facts without quizzing me?
Yeah, sure. Let's quiz. Dump. Diamonds made from carbon. Made 100 miles below the surface. There's most diamonds never reach the consumer market because they're too flawed. Well, that's quite interesting. Most expensive transparent diamond is icy white, not sky blue or pale yellow. The people authorized to buy rough diamonds from De Beers are not gemsmen nor shell holders, but sight holders. It's about blood diamonds, which we know. And the largest diamond ever found was called the Cullinan diamond. And the tiebreaker, were 2 tiebreakers. First of all, stretching the diamond connection, talking about Diamonds Are Forever, the 8th James Bond film. How much did it gross at the American box office? That was 43 million. In the latest Bond film, Spectre, Bond is played by Daniel Craig. How much was Craig reportedly paid to appear in the latest James Bond film? Would you like to guess?
He didn't want to do it.
He didn't want to do it.
He didn't want to do it. 15 million, 20 million?
Oh, okay. 39 million.
Wow.
One film.
Wow.
39.
Wow.
That's
insane. But I do remember that just after the one before Skyfall, he was running around giving grumpy press conferences saying, I'm never going to do another one again. And then like a year later, I'm doing another one again.
And he's doing yet another one, I think.
One more?
I think. Oh, was that Spectre? I don't know. I think they're looking for a new one. And they are Idris Elba, I think he's trolling the
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to see it, but I don't know.
Should be.
I think it would implode. Okay, so what are we reading next week, Anise?
Next week we are reading Passage by Kevin Jarrett Hossein. It's in Granta. It won the 2018 Commonwealth Short Story Prize.
Very good.
Yep. Winning entry from the Caribbean.
Excellent.
I guess it's regional winner, so this won the Caribbean one. I guess the Commonwealth spreads.
It does.
It does spread.
Not quite as far as it used to, but that's another issue.
Yeah. But before you go, visit our diamond-encrusted website at literaryroadhouse.com and leave your dreamlike comments on the story. You can also visit our other silken internet rooms on Twitter at Lit Roadhouse or in our discussion Facebook group, the Literary Roadhouse Readers. If the story felt long and you wanted it to be even longer, join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club. It's a monthly podcast where we discuss full fiction novels. And we don't have a diamond the size of a mountain. So please support our podcast expenses on patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit or diamond helps. And as always, share this podcast with the men that you keep in a prison under your golf course. Did I say that right? I'm doing this off the top of my head. Yeah.
Very good.
And I'll do it again. You can just cut that part out. But I'm going to be like, until next time, share this story with the pilots that you keep under your golf course in jail. Until next time, read a good story.
Very good.
I did that one on the fly, except for the very first bit.
Well done.
Woo.
Excellent.